Today, we're very excited about the opportunity we have to hear from a fantastic speaker. Her name is Zoe Weil. Zoe received her master's degree in theological studies from Harvard Divinity School and a master's and bachelor's in English literature from the University of Pennsylvania. Zoe is the author of 7 books, but she's probably best known for a TED Talks that she did back in 2010 called The World Becomes What You Teach. It became a top 50 TED Talks at that time. She's the co-founder and president of the Institute for Humane Education and is considered a pioneer in the comprehensive humane education movement that works to create a peaceful, healthy, and just world for all people, animals, and the environment through education. Please join me in welcoming Zoe Weil. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Aloha. I feel like a princess with these 2 gorgeous leis. I love this tradition in Hawaii. I think I have to keep coming back from Maine just for the leis. So when I was in college, I dated a medical student. And one day he said to me that he thought that being a physician was the most noble profession, which really irritated me because I'd gone to college pre-med and had abandoned that career path. So not only was I now wondering whether I was going to pursue the most noble profession, but I also thought it's sort of silly to rate professions based on their nobility. I mean, who does that, right? And it stayed with me for decades, that comment. And I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago, I found myself thinking about that comment again, and still thinking it's silly to rate professions based on their nobility. I found myself also thinking that if I had to say what I thought was the most noble profession, I would say teaching. You can clap for that. And the reason why is that there is no other profession that holds the future in its hands. You teachers, more than any other professionals, will determine whether the future is bright and healthy and peaceful and compassionate. No pressure. So when I was 15, and don't worry, I'm not going to tell you my entire life story, just a few snippets. When I was 15, I asked William Shatner, who played Captain Kirk on the original Star Trek series, to kiss me at a Star Trek convention in front of 5,000 people. So I spent a lot of time reflecting on why I would have wanted to publicly humiliate myself as a 15-year-old. It's a little counterintuitive. And I realized that the reason Star Trek was so profoundly important to me was because of the future it depicted. A future in which we weren't racist or xenophobic, except maybe with Klingons and Romulans, but even we worked on that. And we had solved our earthly problems. Our planet was healthy. We were part of a united federation of planets. And we were explorers without being conquerors. That vision is one I believe in. I believe that it's possible to create a just and healthy and peaceful world. I believe that it's possible to create sustainable energy and production and agricultural and construction and criminal justice and other systems. I believe it's possible to end poverty and to ensure that everybody has access to equal rights. I believe that it's possible to slow the rate of extinction and to restore ecosystems. And I believe that there is one underlying system that we need to address to achieve that. And this is based on my 30 years of experience. And that's what I'm here to share with you. Thoreau once said, "There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root." And Mahatma Gandhi once said, "If we are to reach real peace in the world, we shall have to begin with children." The education of children is the root system underlying all other systems. And I believe that if we address and transform this system, we can solve the problems that we face in the world. So how did I come to believe this? When I was in graduate school, I'm back to my life story now, I was looking for a summer job in Philadelphia. And I found a program that offered week-long courses to middle school students. And so I pitched 5 courses to the director. She said yes to all of them. And one of them was a course on environmental issues, and one was a course on animal issues. There were some other courses as well. But those were the 2 that addressed ethical, current issues. And I watched as these students were transformed over the course of a week. In one case, overnight. So in the middle of the week in the animal issues course, which by the way was the second most popular of the 60 courses that were offered that summer, second only to robotics, which as a Star Trek fan was okay with me. So I had talked about product testing on animals, where everything from personal care items to oven cleaners squeezed into the eyes of conscious rabbits and force-fed to animals in quantities that kill and smeared on their abraded skin. And this boy went home that night and he made his own homemade leaflets. Now this was in 1987. He did not have a personal computer, so he hand wrote his leaflets. And he came back into class that day, and while the rest of us were having lunch, he was standing on a Philadelphia street corner handing out his leaflets. He wanted to create change. Well, several of the students in that class went on to form a Philadelphia area-wide student group, and they did all sorts of actions in Philadelphia. They won awards for their work. And about 8 years ago, I was invited to give a talk with Jane Goodall in New York City, which was quite the honor, as you can imagine. So I invited one of these students who had been in that class, that first class that I had taught, to come. He was then working, and still is working actually, for the mayor of New York on HIV/AIDS issues. And when I was introducing him after my talk to some of my friends, and I was saying he was in the first course I ever taught, he interjected, before I could even finish my sentence, "That course changed my life." Well, it also changed my life, because that's when I realized that I could be what I call a humane educator, somebody who teaches about the interconnected issues of human rights and environmental preservation and animal protection. And I started a program in the Philadelphia area going into schools and giving presentations on these issues. And we were reaching about 10,000 students a year, which sounds like a lot of students, but it's just a drop in the bucket, and these were not in-depth classes. These were often assembly programs. And I began to think about how necessary it was that this kind of education not be an add-on that somebody comes in and delivers as an assembly program, but integrated into what we teach in schools. So 21 years ago, I co-founded the Institute for Humane Education primarily to help people like you, teachers, to bring relevant global ethical issues into your classrooms, integrated into your curriculum. Because I think that there are 3 things that we need to do. Just 3, and they're not that hard. The first thing that I think, well, okay, I take that back. It's going to take some work. The first thing that I think we need to do is that we need to examine and transform the very purpose of schooling. And Mark talked about this morning. And then Mike talked about it in his workshop. What is the purpose of schooling? Well, for years I kept hearing the buzz phrase by the media and politicians about how we need to prepare our students for the global economy to be competitive. How many of you have heard that buzz phrase, that we need to prepare our students for global competition? Raise your hands if you've heard that. Okay, lots of hands going up. How many of you knew that that is actually the mission statement of the United States Department of Education? So if you go to the United States Department of Education website, type in mission statement, there it is. That is the very purpose of schooling in the United States. And I don't think that it's a good enough purpose for today's world. I think that our students need to be able to solve the grave challenges that we face. I think they need to be able to do more than be globally competitive. I think they need to be solutionaries for a peaceful and a just and a healthy world for everyone. And so that's what I think that our mission should be, to educate students to be solutionaries. So what else does that mean? So that's number one. That's probably the hardest one that we have to tackle, is actually changing that mindset. But if we change that mindset, think about how much else will change. So the second thing that we need to do is we need to then make schools real world and solution focused. And then the third thing that we need to do is we need to prepare teachers so that they know how to educate their students to be solutionaries. So what is a solutionary? A solutionary is somebody who can identify inhumane and unsustainable systems and then transform those systems and create new systems that are healthy and peaceful and good for everyone, for people, for other species, and for the environment. And what would education look like if it were solutionary focused? Well, real world problems and questions could drive the curriculum. A question like this: how can we ensure that everyone has access to clean water? That's an issue that we can all care about. And think about what would happen if that question drove a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary curriculum, so that through science, students might be exploring questions like, what's causing desertification and the depletion of aquifers? Or where has the fresh water gone, given that we live in a closed ecological system? And through math, students could be examining how much water does it take to produce the various foods we eat. And through language arts and social studies, students could be grappling with and writing about and speaking about questions like, should everybody have a right to clean water? Who doesn't have access to clean water, and why? Why is water being privatized? What's happening in Flint, Michigan right now? Or at the Standing Rock Reservation? In civics class, students could be, or not even in class, but through this interdisciplinary approach, students could be exploring, where does their fresh water come from, and where does it go after use? And then students could work together to solve a water problem. And I'm going to read just a short section from my book, The World Becomes What We Teach, about what that could look like. Aisha is an advanced science student, years ahead of her grade level. Justin is an excellent writer with a blog that many fellow students read regularly. Martina loves doing research and is a proficient critical and systems thinker. Jose is an artist and already very good at graphic design. Kira is a quintessential diplomat who listens calmly and openly. Working together, they develop a solution to the problem of pollution in their local river and prepare a presentation utilizing each of their talents, efforts, and knowledge to share their solution with their community so that it gains widespread support for implementation. On their own, each has much to contribute. Together, they are a force. So, I know that you teachers are really busy. You have so much on your plates. And you could be thinking, it sounds good, but how could I possibly do this? How could I work with other teachers within my particular job? And with other teachers. Did I say that? I think I said students. To actually do interdisciplinary units like this. And how can I create them? How would I do this? Well, we're here to help with that. And one thing that we have created at the Institute for Humane Education, we have a free resource center at our website, humaneeducation.org. And we have a solutionary unit. The target age is 9th grade, but it can be modified. And the solutionary unit explores this question: what do the primary causes of death of people in the United States have to do with the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico? Now, I'm imagining that many people in this room know what dead zones are. I'm imagining that many people in the room know what the primary cause of death in the United States is. How many people in this room already have an answer to that question? You're pretty sure you know what they have to do with each other. Anybody? I'm seeing a couple hands, but not many. It's an intriguing question. It's a complex question that looks at many, many systems. So if you want to explore the answer to this question, go download the unit. You can find it on our website. If in the resource section of our website, if you just type in dead zone unit, it'll pop up and you can download it. I'm not going to tell you the answer because I want you all to go and explore this question if it will be helpful to you. So I hope you noticed this morning, first of all, a huge thank you to Mark and his students, or not his students, but the students who were up here, all of those students answering those questions for us. Did you notice when they were asked about the really meaningful work that they did in school, that the high school students were all saying things that they did after school, things that they did as extracurriculars, that they were not actually talking about what was happening in their curriculum? So everything I'm talking about with you today is meant to be integrated into your curricula, into your school day. So it's not only in after school, not only on weekends, when students are doing real world focused, solutionary focused work. So one thing that's really important about thinking in this way is that solutionaries don't inadvertently exacerbate problems while they seek to solve other problems, which happens all the time when we try to solve problems. So for example, as we have tried to increase prosperity and boost our economy for people, we are contributing to more resource depletion and more pollution. Or as we have tried to produce more food, we have created environmentally destructive and inhumane agricultural systems and confinement operations of animals that causes more pollution and more cruelty. But when somebody is a solutionary, they look at all of these potential unintended consequences and they make sure that their solutions don't cause those unintended negative consequences. So becoming a solutionary is challenging, but it's incredibly rewarding and it's incredibly meaningful. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to outline the process of how you get toward being a solutionary. But since being a solutionary requires many skills and lots of research and effort, this outline is going to be bare bones. So when we look at becoming a solutionary, we start with a problem. And ideally, it's a problem generated by your students. So it's something that they care about solving. Not that you care about solving, but that they care about solving. And you might think, well, yeah, but I teach science, and so I can't have them doing a project on human trafficking when I need them to do a science project. Okay, there can still be lots of parameters for a problem that's science-based. Or if you're a social studies or language arts teacher, a problem that is social-based. So the next question to ask are, what are the causes of this problem? And then you're going to get into systems thinking. What are the many causes of this problem? There's never just one. There are many causes to a problem. So what are they? So how can we help our students to become systems thinkers? And by the way, since I'm only going to touch on this very briefly, tomorrow at 10:30, go hear Mike Johnston's workshop here, where he is going to dive deep into systems thinking. So the next question to ask is, who is harmed by this problem and who benefits? Because there's always people who benefit. Otherwise, we wouldn't perpetuate these problems. And if we don't understand who's benefiting, we're not going to be able to come up with a solution that addresses those people's needs. And we're just going to face resistance to our solution. So we need to think about that. And then ultimately, we need to ask, where is a good leverage point for creating a solution? And then come up with some solutions. So let's say that the problem we're going to address is disposable water bottles. So we can create a mind map for a disposable water bottle. And I just have to say quickly about how I came to have this Fiji water bottle. You know, you're all here in Hawaii, which isn't that far from Fiji, but I live in Maine. And one day, a long, long time ago, when Fiji water was just introduced on the market, my husband and I had gone for a hike. We drunk all the water that we'd had with us. I needed to fill up with gas. I stopped at a gas station. We were thirsty. We went in, and I saw this water bottle. And I'd never seen a square water bottle before with a hibiscus flower on it. I found myself drawn to it, and I bought it. And we got in the car, I was driving, my husband's looking at the bottle, because he's never seen Fiji water either, and he says, Zoe, I can't believe you bought this. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, it comes from Fiji. I said, no, it's just called Fiji water. I mean, nobody would transport water halfway around the world. He said, Zoe, I'm reading it. It says bottled in Fiji. So I said, okay, well, I guess I have to use this water bottle for the rest of my life in presentations, so that's what I'm doing. So what are the systems that contribute to disposable water bottles? And whether it's Dasani or it's Aquafina or it's Poland Springs, which is now owned by Nestle, which has never been spring water, by the way. If you've ever seen Poland Springs water, everybody thinks it's spring water. It just came originally from the town of Poland Springs. I know this. I live in Maine. It's a big issue because they keep expanding and drilling more wells, which they sometimes have to treat because the water has problems. Anyway, I'm digressing. So what are the various systems that contribute to disposable water? And you can see these big systems in the boxes, and then subsystems underneath these boxes. And so when I do a mind map like this with students, every time we identify a system, we draw a line between that system and the problem. And then I ask them, what systems are connected to other systems? And they start saying, oh, well, you know, the energy system is connected to the transportation system. Oh, wait, well, that's also connected to ecosystems. Wait, that's connected to our economic system. Media is connected to our economic, and suddenly they're all connected. And they see they're all connected. And then we ask, okay, who's harmed by this problem? And we can talk about plastics in our environment, in the oceans. We can talk about plastic leaching from those bottles and getting into our own bodies. We can talk about the production of that plastic and all the fossil fuels that go into that plastic, that go into the manufacturing, that go into transporting water all across the globe. We can ask a question like, which gets back to our other water question, how much water does it take to produce Fiji water? or any bottled water. In the case of Fiji, it takes over 7 liters of water to produce a liter of Fiji water. So imagine all that water waste. What about the effects on people? What about the effects on people in Fiji? There are people in Fiji who don't have access to clean water while a foreign company is transporting their water across the globe and making huge profits. Who else benefits? Who else is harmed? Other species are harmed by what we're doing to our planet. Now, who benefits? Well, we can think, okay, well, we benefit if we like it and we can afford it. And the people who are owners of Fiji water, they're benefiting. But that doesn't get all of us off the hook. Most of us in this room have 401k plans. We have retirement accounts. We don't know where all our money is invested, but there's a decent chance your money is invested in Coke or Pepsi or some other company that is producing bottled water. We're all benefiting. So now when we think about what are our leverage points for creating change, if we want to change this single-use system in which lots of people benefit, the corner store benefits, that's selling it. When I bought this bottle, somebody benefited from that, right in my own community. So how can we change this so that people can still have benefits, but we're not causing so much harm? So then we get to the leverage points. What would be the leverage points for creating change? And I'm not going to go into that now, and I'm not going to go into solutions because we don't have time. But that would be what your students would be doing if this was the problem they addressed. They would be exploring that. And if you're thinking, oh, this sounds good, might want to do something like this, well, you can go to our website, humaneeducation.org, and go to the resource section, and you can download Becoming a Solutionaire, and it outlines in more detail what I just talked you through just there. So, now what I want to ask is, how can you tell when a solution is really solutionary? And by that, I mean that the solution goes to the root of the problem, addresses it at its core. It's not a Band-Aid. And that solution doesn't cause unintended consequences. It doesn't harm other people. It doesn't harm animals. It doesn't harm the environment, or to the greatest degree possible, it doesn't do that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you the rubric that we've developed that describes how you assess a solution based on a solutionary scale, from emerging all the way to exemplary. And I'm going to put this slide up, and if you can't read it in the back, raise your hand, and then I'll read it out loud. If everybody can read it just by looking at the slide, I'm going to let you read it at your own pace, because I don't really like it when people read their PowerPoint slides. So raise your hand if you cannot read this in the back. Okay, I'm going to read it. So an emerging solution. The solution does not yet address root systemic causes and may cause harm to people, animals, or the environment. A developing solution. The solution addresses root systemic causes but harms people, animals, and or the environment, or the solution addresses the problem without harming people, animals, or the environment but does not address root systemic causes. Proficient. The solution addresses root systemic causes and strives not to harm people, animals, or the environment. And finally, exemplary. The solution significantly and strategically addresses root systemic causes and does not harm people, animals, and or the environment. So that's the rubric. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you, and anybody who wants this rubric, just email me. I'm happy to send it to you, and some people are taking pictures of it. I'm going to show you a 3-minute video of a CNN hero. His name's Robert Lee, and he was trying to address 2 problems, the problem of food waste and the problem of hunger. And Robert Lee is doing something really beautiful and wonderful, which you'll see. That's why he's a CNN hero. But as you watch this, what I want you to be thinking about is this rubric. And I want you to be thinking about whether his solution is emerging, developing, proficient, or exemplary, based on this rubric.
It was very difficult for my parents when they first came to the United States. They basically had to start over. We were moving around a lot. It was pretty difficult even to get food sometimes. When you're young, you don't really know, and you kind of just think that that's normal. I used to work at JP Morgan. Hey guys, what's up? All right. I was a risk analyst, and about 9 months ago, I decided to quit my job and do this full time. On a personal level, I just hated seeing food waste. Thanks so much. Every day that I spent at JP Morgan was a day I could have been spending on rescuing leftover cuisine.
Hey, Robert, how are you? All right. Good, good.
I had known how I felt to be hungry. Seeing all that food go to waste is just crazy.
So this is Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, also known as RLC.
All of our events have a lead rescuer, and then there's a group of volunteers who help the lead rescuer bring the food from place to place.
So today we're going to be bringing, it's about 50 pounds of bagels to the Boundary Mission, which is a 15-minute walk.
We make it so easy to volunteer.
I can take like an hour out of my schedule.
Right, whatever you want.
Do it
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah.
I'll plan it ahead, get it confirmed.
Our volunteers are tremendously committed. We pretty much operate like 10 a.m. to midnight, and we just work with different restaurants. And do you guys know Cass's Deli? We work with them at 10:30 at night, closer to 11 p.m. And they do these pickups and drop-offs in any type of weather, rain, sleet, or shine. So out of the 100% of food that we produce in this country, how much do you think we actually waste, and how much do you think we actually consume as a percentage?
35%.
What do you
I'd say
think?
more like 40%.
40% is actually correct. We literally produce enough food in this country to feed everyone, and we just throw it away, which is why we need people like you guys coming out and volunteering.
So today we're preparing to serve 200 plus people for lunch. We'll probably see 300 people for dinner tonight. Robert's donation is going to make an amazing difference, but what it also does is it inspires others to do the same thing.
Thanks for coming, man. Yeah, no problem. Even picking up a small bag and walking it for 20 minutes is important to me, because that small bag and that one small route is the beginning of a large route where we have tons of restaurants picking up multiple small bags, and that can add up to a lot of food. 3, 2, 1. Yay, RLC. All right.
I forgot. I'm glad you clapped, because what he's doing is really wonderful. And now we're going to bring up that rubric again. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. And I'm going to go through I'm going to ask you how many of you think this is emerging. Raise your hands. Developing, raise your hands. And I'm going to ask you that. And raise your hands high, and then everybody have a chance to look around the room while I ask this question. So how many of you think his solution was emerging? Okay. How many of you think that his solution was developing? How many think it was proficient? And how many of you think it was exemplary? Okay, so I saw the most for developing. I saw some for emerging, very few for exemplary, and a bunch for proficient. I'll tell you where I think it falls, and by the way, there's no right or wrong answer to this. There's arguments that can be made for people to say different things. I think it falls in the second half of developing. I think that the solution addresses the problem without harming people, animals, or the environment. but I don't think it goes to the root systemic causes of either food waste or hunger. So that's why I put it there. So it's important to be thinking about this, because while it is really important and really wonderful that we encourage our students, in some cases we require them, but we encourage our students to volunteer and to be generous and to participate in community service, that if we truly want to stop hunger so that we don't have to have food drives year after year after year to help those who don't have enough food to eat, then we need to get to the root of the problem and we need to solve it. So while I am not at all suggesting that we shouldn't have students doing food drives and doing good works and volunteering and being generous and kind in those ways, what I am suggesting is we need to ensure that we are educating those very same students to be solutionaries who can end hunger. Now you might be thinking, okay, my fifth graders are just not going to be ending hunger. And you're right, your fifth graders aren't going to be ending hunger. They can tackle problems in age-appropriate ways. That water bottle example, it doesn't have to be, how are we going to end disposable beverage bottles for a seventh grade student, but maybe it could be, could we address the disposable water bottles and beverage bottles in our own school? Could we make a change there? What would that look like? Could we address hunger in our own community? What would that look like? So this brings me to how we can help you to bring this to your schools. So we are developing a solutionary program for middle and high school students right now. It will be able to be used by teachers of younger students and at the college level, but right now we're focusing on middle and high school students. And our solutionary program is meant to be integrated into your curricula, whatever you teach. And in the solutionary program, students collaborate to address a problem that concerns them. They learn to research it thoroughly, to communicate with mentors and experts, to gain more knowledge and information that they need, to develop a number of solutions and assess which ones are the most practical and feasible and likely to succeed, that have the greatest leverage. And then ultimately, we'd like them to implement that solution if you've created enough time in your curriculum for that. Sometimes you don't have enough time, so they get to the proposal phase, but not the implementation phase. And then to share their solutions at a solutionary summit, comprised not just of the school body, but also of community members, like legislators and investors and media who can spread the best ideas so that they will get implemented far and wide. So I'm going to show you a 3-minute video of the first year of our pilot for this program. So we are now in the 3rd year of a 3-year pilot, and you're going to see the students who completed the first year. And the first thing you're going to notice when the video comes up is it has a different name. We called it the Solutionary Congress Program, and the culminating event we called a Solutionary Congress. And the 2nd year of the pilot program, this past year that we just completed, the teachers pointed out to us that Congress didn't have a really good reputation. It was a little confusing for the students, and that they thought it would be better if we left Congress out of the name. And since we are collaborating with teachers to create this program, we are not just doing it from up on high and delivering it. We are working intimately with teachers through this pilot program. We changed the name, so it's now Solutionary Program and Solutionary Summit.
The problems we're trying to attack are serious.
We have wars, riots.
Teen pregnancy is a major problem in foster care.
Police brutality.
We would like to talk about how we can stop problems in the environment.
Our mission is to make sure that every animal is valued equally.
In the Solutionary Congress program, students identify a real-world problem and conduct research to understand its underlying systems. Students develop and implement a solution that exemplifies what it means to be a solutionary, doing the most good and least harm for people, animals, and the planet.
In that 1 second I just waited, 1.5 acres of trees was just destroyed.
And 3,000 animals were killed.
Every year, nearly 30,000 people commit suicide.
I'm tired of hearing the causes of obesity. Why don't we look for a solution?
The program culminates when students come together for a Solutionary Congress to present their solutions to a panel of experts and community members.
You don't have to solve a problem in a necessarily conventional way. You can create your own solution to it.
We'll create a game detailing the importance of nature.
The program engages students in learning and caring about complex, interconnected issues in our world while using their academic knowledge and skills.
Right now, it is time to take a stand against the pressure and the racism in sports.
Ours could be different because we focus on children and adults.
You get to know people who you didn't know before and communities that you didn't necessarily have a connection with.
In order to empathize with someone, you have to really understand what they're going through.
This will allow us to see that we're more similar than we ever thought we had been before.
Because we're all kind of one. We're all a people.
It helps them develop skills in collaboration as well as critical, creative, and systems thinking skills.
We're doing something interactive and we're doing something that's really attacking the cause of the problem.
We were able to work together to create innovative ideas that not many people, I think, have thought of yet.
Taking part in a Solutionary Congress teaches and inspires students to solve the most pressing issues in our world.
The Solutionary Congress program taught me to just go for it. It kind of boosted my confidence.
We learned a lot of new things, even though they might have been kind of sad.
We really may have an impact on the world if we try hard enough and we're really dedicated.
I'm not just a statistic and I can make a difference.
At the Institute for Humane Education, we provide educators with the resources needed to start a Solutionary Congress program.
Although it might seem a little bit daunting at first, it's actually really fun and it's definitely possible once you put your heart and soul into it.
The Solutionary Congress program is for everyone, and we need all the help we can get to attack the major problems we are having now.
Aren't they inspiring? I love watching that video. I've watched it so many times. I can finally watch it without crying, which is a good thing. So I hope what you can see is that this program enables students to identify problems that are of deep concern to themselves and then develop their empathy. It helps them to work collaboratively to achieve a positive real-world goal. It enables them to become proficient researchers and critical, strategic, and systems thinkers. It helps them to develop meaningful solutions to actual problems that require the cultivation of their own self-discipline and their own self-motivation. It enables them to build their communication skills so they can share their ideas with others and to experience what Mark calls real-world accomplishments. And the joy and the self-confidence and the self-esteem that you also mentioned, and the sense of purpose that comes from doing that. And it also, frankly, helps them build a real-world resume that makes them more valuable to employers, to colleges. So I hope one of the things that you noticed, for all of you SEL teachers out there in the SEL track, how perfectly this work fits in with SEL. The only thing that I would say it adds to this is that it goes beyond homes and communities to the world. But all of these goals of SEL are achieved through this kind of work. So I want to tell you the status of the program right now. I said that we were entering the third and final year of our 3-year pilot. So we are currently working with 10 schools, 14 teachers in 10 schools middle schools and high schools, different kinds. Last year we worked only with public schools because we thought if we can show that this program can work within the public school curriculum, it can work anywhere. We know it can be an after-school program. We know it can be an elective, but can it be integrated into the public school system? And yes, it can. This year we have a couple of independent schools who are doing the program as well. And we are working with the teachers to produce a digital guidebook, online course, learning modules, day-long workshop, 4-day summer institute. And all of that will be ready. It's all rolling out right now, but it will all be ready for our public expansion next summer. So I am really hoping that Hawaii, with a conference called Schools of the Future, I mean, how cool is that, is going to want to bring this program to so many of your schools. And what happens when you bring it to many schools is that you get to have a solutionary summit where your students meet other students from other schools, and they share their learning and their solutions with a much wider audience. And they learn from their peers, as well as, of course, sharing their solutions with this authentic audience of people who can spread their ideas, like legislators and policymakers and media. So, what happens if we don't transform education? You know, I began with this very hopeful vision of the future, but that future is not guaranteed. The future could become bleaker. We could continue on the trajectory of losing half of all species on Earth by the end of this century, or sooner. The trajectory in which coral reefs and rainforests and glaciers continue to disappear, in which there is greater unrest with a growing population of people who are lacking access to resources or who are victims of climate change disasters. That could happen. And that would be crazy. Because never before have we had the capacity, and Mark talked about this morning, never before have we had the capacity to communicate and collaborate instantaneously with people across the globe to solve our problems. We have the capacity to get all the information that we need to solve our problems. So why wouldn't we do that? So I'm going to start to wrap up now by telling you a couple of stories. So 5 years ago, I was invited to speak at a middle school in Connecticut. It was an independent school, progressive school, and a fairly affluent school. And that's important for the story, that you know that. So I first started with the 5th and 6th graders, and there were 45 children in the room, and I asked them what they thought were the biggest problems in the world. And they listed a whole bunch of problems. They filled up the whiteboard with problems that you would say was not a substantially different list than when I ask adults that question or when I ask older students that question. And when that whiteboard was filled up, I asked them to raise their hands if they could imagine us solving those problems they named. And of the 45 kids, only 5 raised their hands. Only 5 could even imagine that we could solve the problems they named. That was the most sobering moment in my experience as an educator. I thought, if young people can't even imagine us solving these problems, what's going to motivate them to try? So I knew I had to do something and do something quickly. So I did a guided visualization with them. I asked them to close their eyes. And I'm going to do the same thing with you, so you get to experience what those 5th and 6th graders experienced. Oh, and by the way, before I go on, I want to say that those children had not been taught about these problems in school. When they listed on the whiteboard all those problems, they knew about them, but they weren't being taught about them. One little boy said sex trafficking. That was not being taught in school. Okay. So I'd like you to sit comfortably and quietly and to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And remember that this is what I did with 5th and 6th graders. So I'd like you to imagine that you are very old and you are approaching the end of a very long and very well-lived life. Picture yourself sitting on a park bench on a beautiful day, breathing clean air. All the waterways around you are clean. The air is fragrant and the birds are singing. And at the end of your life, there hasn't been a war in decades. And nobody goes to bed hungry because they had no choice. We've learned to treat each other and non-human animals with respect and compassion. And it's not a perfect world, but it's a very good world. And while you're sitting there on a park bench, a child comes up and joins you, and this child has been studying history and learning about much darker times, times that you lived through. And the child has all sorts of questions for you. And then the child asks you this final question. What role did you play in helping to bring about this better world? What did you do? How would you like to be able to answer that child? What will you say? Now open your eyes. I didn't give you a very long time to answer that question, so I hope you will actually think about it for yourselves. But I want you to remember that I did this with 5th and 6th graders. And while they still had their eyes closed, I asked them to raise their hands if now they could imagine us solving the problems that they had listed on that whiteboard. And this time the ratio flipped. 40 hands went up in the air. It didn't take much to restore their hope, their sense that they could make a difference. Now, remember when I told you that these were privileged kids? That's important because I don't know that I could have turned that around that quickly for kids who didn't have enough food to eat. But with those kids, it was pretty quick. So last October, I was in Guadalajara, Mexico with Mike Johnston, who invited me to co-keynote a workshop for international teachers that he'd been asked to keynote. And the day before the conference began, I was invited to visit the American School of Guadalajara, which was hosting this conference. And while I was there, they asked if I would come talk to the 5th graders. I said, sure. So I went in, I was not prepared. So I just asked them if they thought that we could solve the problems in the world. And every hand flew up in the air, yes. What was different? It wasn't the demographic, because the American School of Guadalajara is also an independent school filled with largely privileged, affluent families. So it wasn't that. What it was, the real difference, is that their teacher was teaching them in age-appropriate ways about the problems in the world and inviting them to solve those problems. So those kids had been active, getting composting on their campus and getting solar panels on their roofs. They knew these problems could be solved because they were active in solving them. So if we, for even a moment, think, I don't know how good it is for kids to have them tackling these tough problems. You know, isn't that going to be depressing for them? I mean, you heard that one boy saying, even though it's sometimes sad, you know, it's still worth it. I think we do them a disservice if we don't talk about these pressing issues, because look what happened at that Connecticut school. They knew, and they were already cynical and hopeless. But if we engage them in being solutionaries, they will know what Joan Baez said so beautifully. Action is the antidote to despair. This is a win for children. It's a win for them because they develop the skills that will take them into the future in the best possible ways. It is a win because it develops their heart. It develops their communication skills. It helps them to be the best possible people they can be and to follow their passions in a direction that benefits the world. It's a win for you. Don't you want your students to be engaged in that way? Fully passionate about what they are learning and doing? So it's a win for you and your schools. And of course, it's a win for the world. So the last thing I want to share with you is what we can offer you at the Institute for Humane Education. And here's one of those things with lots of words again. You already know we have loads of free downloadable resources on our website, and if you forget our website, you all have a sticker in your bag that looks like this, "The world becomes what you teach," with our website right on it. We have the solutionary program and all of the professional development that will be ready by next summer. We also have an online graduate programs. So if you're in Hawaii and you're thinking, hey, Zoes in Maine, how does this work? We have an online graduate program. And we actually have one person in the room. Kate, where are you? Raise your hand. There's Kate. She's in the grad program right now, so if anybody would like to talk to Kate, I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you. She's an English teacher at Iolani. And we also have another graduate, not just of our master's program, but the first graduate of our PhD affiliation with Saybrook University, Mike Johnston, who I keep referring to. Don't forget to go to his workshop tomorrow at 10:30. Mike, stand up so they can see you. Yay. Oh, yeah, give Mike a hand. So, loads of resources. You please, 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 please sign up to be on our e-newsletter. We have an e-newsletter that comes out with lots and lots of resources for you. My book, The World Becomes What We Teach, Educating a Generation of Solutionaries, is here. I'm going to be signing it this afternoon if anybody wants to buy a copy. And now you know how to reach me, so take a picture of that if that's helpful. And I'm going to show you a video that we produced that I hope will end us all on an inspiring note before my last few words.
This hand will scale up tidal energy to address climate change. This hand will help draft your country's foreign policy to reduce conflict. This hand will inspire societies to embrace the compassionate treatment of animals. This one will set the new legal standard in the protection of human rights. This hand will provide farmers with regenerative systems to keep food healthy. This hand will help ensure equal access to education. This one will protect endangered species. This hand will help prevent cancer, will address income inequality, protect our environment.
You might have noticed that that video shows a very traditional classroom with a blackboard. I might just say that that shows that this can be done anywhere. So when I imagine a solutionary generation, I see the grave challenges that we face being solved. I can see our broken political systems, our imperfect economic systems, our unjust and inhumane agricultural and production systems, our dysfunctional criminal justice system, our too expensive healthcare system, all of these systems made more equitable, more humane, more sustainable. And it will be because of you. We started with my story about the Star Trek future. And another shout out to Mark for that slide. So I just want to end by saying, may we all, in this room and all life on earth, live long and prosper. Mahalo.